I hereby introduce to you Mr. Michael Veazey.
Today's episode is brought to you by the 10K Collective. The 10K Collective is a collection of men and women who are doing at least $25,000 a month on Amazon in the UK, US, Europe, doesn't matter, but that is the figure as a minimum. Now, why that figure? Because it means you get to meet with like-minded people who are serious about Amazon, who are doing well, and who are ambitious to do better rather than knocking around with newbies, which isn't going to help you if you want to scale up from 6 figures a month to 7 figures or whatever you're ambitious to do, 4 to 5 figures. We have people who are doing up to around the $250,000 a month mark. And as I say, the lowest is 25K. So it's still quite a big spread, but we have amazing things that get shared. You will get 30 minutes each, minimum of 20, 25, even in a really busy month. And there's only 8 to 12 people at any given meeting. So what do we cover in the meetings? Well, we cover topics from how to stay in stock, make more money by not missing out and not being out of stock, dominating a market and the mindset needed, handling whole container loads, how to predict stock needed, for example, how to get a product on primetime British TV for free, as one of our members did back at Halloween last year. So these are not prescribed by me, and it's not a set course. It is simply what comes up, what you need to handle right now to move your business forward. It's very simple, robust format. It's doing really well. We've got great loyalty from the members. I think out of 10 people that have joined it so far, about 8 are still with us after several months, which is a real testament to the fact that they're getting value, and there's a great feel of community, and we have a lot of fun. We take business seriously, but we also try not to take ourselves too seriously. We have a lot of fun. We're very open, and we have a lot of serious debates that actually result in people doing stuff and taking action, like opening up in America, like going to Germany, like, doubling their orders. I mean, serious action takes place as a result of these meetings, and it's also good fun. You'll need to be able to get to London, as well as doing 25,000 a month minimum, roughly in dollars, and it's application only. So if you want to check that out, go to amazingfba.com/mastermind. Make sure you click through to the 10K Collective page rather than applying for the Zero to Hero Mastermind, which is just for those who are just starting out. Thanks very much for listening. Now, on with the show. Ladles and jelly spoons, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. and Mrs. Mayor, Lord Mayor, Lord High Justice, and everybody else who's listening. Thank you very much for listening. Sorry, I just get bored. I've got to vary it up. Humour me here, guys. So I'm going to cut straight to it today. I want to talk about launching on Amazon. What I mean by that, there's a few different things you can call launching. I suppose it's the whole process of deciding what you're going to sell, going and get it, and then putting it out on Amazon. You could call launching. I'm going to talk specifically, though, for those who are in the early days, or first few products, possibly the first several products if you're not very experienced or haven't had any input or good training, and you're launching a product on Amazon itself. So that's what I'm going to address today, because I've had a few calls recently with clients as part of my new launch planning service, which is you can find at amazingfba.com/RARE. RARE. Stands for review, analyze, recommend, and something else. I forget, experiment, I think. So it's basically my way of checking over people's work on their launch, and there are often some very common errors that I think you can correct for yourself. So I was working with a client who launched about a week before she spoke to me, which is quite common, and been working for a long time, for about a year, to get a product off the ground that looked like quite a quality product in some ways, was getting sales, but there's a lot to improve on. So I would say there are basically 3 areas to examine when it comes to launching. And this is the philosophy that I take with everything now, including in the PLP course, the Private Label Process course. The first is ranking. So that means if you want to show up on the search results for particular keywords, that's what ranking means. So if you rank number 1 for the keyword, I know, coffee cup, like I've got one here, then that's what it means, that you will be the first search result once somebody puts the word coffee cup in on Amazon and clicks search, right? So ranking, that's the first thing. So you've got to be visible. If your product is invisible for the right kind of keywords, you're going to get nowhere, right? The second thing is clicks. Are people, when they see your adverts and when they see your listing, which are organic listing, which are somewhat different things, but are they clicking on it? And the third thing is conversions. Are people actually buying? So the one client recently, for example, which is quite typical, came up with the problem that they weren't getting the clicks. So at least that's what she thought, and we went into it in more detail. So let's review those 3 areas: ranking, clicks, conversions, and you can use this as a kind of test for how well you're doing the process and what needs work, where the work needs to go. first thing then, ranking. I think you need to have a very, very clear set of keywords that you're aiming to rank for, meaning to show up on page 1 probably of Amazon, preferably somewhere near the top. So that's the first area that people could go very wrong in, and that comes back to their product research or their keyword research, really. What people often call product research, but it's not really strictly speaking about a product, it's the keywords that people are typing in. That comes down to, in my philosophy on this, is person in the pain. In other words, who is looking and what problems they want solved, and then the keywords that they use. And if you pick an area where if you pick a fight you can't win, then that's a problem that happened at that stage of the game when you decided which keyword market you were going to go into. For example, if I wanted to sell coffee cups or coffee mugs or something, that's going to be quite full of a lot of people selling a pretty cheap item. This one's actually quite expensive. I can't remember who created it. Kath Kidston. There you go. It's a bit of free advertising for Kath Kidston, but that's actually a brand. I actually broke a mug that looks exactly like this and then replaced it for my wife. So I know it cost me £15 or something, which for me was an outrageous sum, but so they're probably doing okay, but the average person is not going to be able to sell a coffee mug for £15, but there will be a lot of people selling mugs. So that's a kind of example of a market where you're making a rod for your own back because the selling price is going to be a few pounds. There's going to be lots of people advertising on sponsored ads. There's going to be lots of people selling a lot of volume and therefore getting a lot of sales and ranking well. It's going to be a tough market to go into. So very often that is such a general problem that it shows up in everything else that follows that decision, right? So this comes down to the decision, and you don't really know, to be fair to everybody, myself included, but anyone who's selling on Amazon, you can read the market and try and get it right, but you don't really know until you actually try and sell. So one of the hypotheses that we're experimenting with when we sell is the hypothesis I can sell coffee mugs, I can get to position 1 or somewhere at position 4, 5, 6, 7 on page 1 and actually make some money from this. So that's one of the first things. So you need to look at what you're targeting and how competitive that is. And, you know, with clients who will often look at their top 1 or 2 keywords that they're targeting and, you know, see how realistic it is to actually sell into that market. And that's a keyword research thing, which is one reason, again, why it's you're better off employing a coach or somebody to help you review your keyword research before you even buy the product, rather than at the point of launching when you may have simply made some poor decisions. So once you've got your target keywords and you've selected the right ones, I would say there are sort of between 1 and 5 that are normally the really main ones, and maybe another 15 to 20 that are your medium tail sort of target keywords. So one of the most important things you should do is immediately, before you even launch, ideally, or if you've forgotten to do it as soon as you hear about it, is to use a keyword ranking tool. For example, Helium 10 has it as part of its suite of products. Many tools do. Whichever one it is, just use one and make sure you put in not only those 20 keywords that you think you're targeting in your listing, but also maybe if you can afford it in their space in your ranking tool, particularly if you've only got one product, then you need to look at getting maybe 100 or so keywords that you should be tracking the ranking for. And the easiest way to do that is reverse ASIN search. So you put in the ASIN Amazon identifier number for a product into a reverse ASIN tool, like the one they have in Helium 10, for example, or whatever else you want to use. And then it will spit out the top 100 keywords or 200 or whatever it is that product is ranking for. So that is a good use of that tool to put that into keyword tracking. And then that gives you a baseline before you pull any levers, because the next thing people want to do is run PPC advertising on their target keywords. And so they should. That's the right way to do it. But there's no point in doing that unless you can see that it's having an effect on the ranking, and you can't do that until you measure it. So the first thing to do, measure everything before you change anything, and then you can see whether it has an effect. So that's the first thing that we got. This lady's going to put into place. I mean, somebody recently working with had only about 4 keywords in their ranking tool. And I said, look, keyword tracking tool. And I said, how many can you track? She said, well, I got this free version, so I can only track 20. I said, well, at least track that many. And I think it's probably worth paying for the paid version to track, up to 100 or so. Bear in mind, most of those won't do anything, but if you get some nice long tail keywords that show up there that can make you nice profitable sales, even if there aren't many of them, if it's profitable, you still want to have those. So don't want to miss out on that information. There's another reason to track keyword ranking. Good. So once you've done that, I mean, by the way, if you haven't done that, you should manually find it on by putting in some of your most important keywords and scrolling through the results until you find out where your product is. So even if you do it manually, just make sure you know at least for the top few keywords. And it's normally obvious what they are. If I'm selling this Cath Kidston coffee mug, it's going to be mug, coffee mug, Merry Christmas coffee mug white, something like that. It's kind of obvious, right? A lot of the time. So the next thing to do before you start running PPC advertising is to make absolutely sure that you have not only put all those keywords that you want to rank for into your listing, but you also need to make sure that you have them in the right sort of place. So if it's a very important keyword for you, you've decided it's a winnable fight but also worth winning, i.e. you could beat the competition, rank somewhere on page 1 and make some nice sales from that, then you need to rank it accordingly. So if it's a very important keyword, you want it in the title, probably at the front, in the bullet points and the description and the so-called back-end keywords as well. If it's a secondary but still important keyword, you want it in the bullets, description, back-end. So if you don't put your keywords in those places, it's going to be much harder to get Amazon to rank you for them. Amazon will do a fair job of figuring it out, but make it obvious, make it easy for the algorithm to figure out. So only really once you built the listing correctly and then once you started tracking your keyword ranking should you then be doing something more active, which is running PPC or pay-per-click advertising. A few things about that. I mean, if you find that one of the things you need to check out is your click-through rate. So if you find that you're getting very, very few clicks, there are a few possibilities. One thing is you're not bidding enough, and if you're in a competitive market niche, like one of the ones I looked at with the client recently, they're out of the whatever it was, 16 odd, maybe 20 positions on page 1. There were about 8 sponsored ads as it showed up on a laptop anyway, which is a hell of a lot. So if you're going to stand out in a situation like that, you need to bid quite aggressively. And okay, that may be a reason for you to rethink your keyword niche choices, because that sounds like that's pretty competitive. And if the price point is low as well, that could be a reason to just stay out of that arena completely. But assuming that you want to stay with that keyword, you're going to have to bid aggressively enough to stand out. That's the first thing. Second thing is budget. If you've got a cost per click of about £1.50, for example, per click, and your budget is £10 a day or something, you're going to only have about budget enough for 6 clicks, and that's probably not going to make you very much. Not going to do anything much really. It doesn't send strong algorithm signals. It's not going to make sales probably, or not very fast. So don't be too shy about it. I mean, bid as high as you need to, and have a strong budget. So, you know, how long's a piece of string? But I mean, I think if you want to get clicks at £1 a click, you want to be getting a decent number of clicks, £30-50 a day if you're launching a product, I know, something like that. In terms of click-through rates or the CTR, you want to be getting a decent minimum, maybe around 1% if you can, which shows that it's relevant. And if that's too low, it may be that your listing looks irrelevant. Now, what does that mean? It means people aren't clicking on it, but the overall offer is what people are looking at. So if you've got your typical launch, which is if it's priced too high, you've got a reasonably decent main photo or even a really good one, but no reviews, guess what? You've got no social proof, your price is too high, you're not going to get anyone clicking on it. And I've seen that quite a lot recently with some clients I've been working with. So the solution is, I'm afraid, very simple, which is, number 1, lower your price, particularly until you get some reviews. Number 2, get some reviews by whatever way you can, mostly grey hat, black hat, but that needs to be in place. And number 3, bid aggressively on advertising. And then only once you've got some reviews and you've got the rankings you want, which is the key thing that drives it all, can you then start to feather down the advertising spend and feather up the price over time. It's a very simple, robust strategy. It works. It's very, very simple. The people who are killing it in the £1 Million Mastermind do this exact strategy. It's not rocket science, but because it's simple, it costs a lot of money, people aren't so keen on doing it. Guess what? It's effective. In fact, it's the only thing I've seen consistently effective over the last few months, where a lot of the usual hacks with storefront URLs and complicated things have been very iffy or just simply not effective amongst the power sellers that I know personally. So that's the main thing I have to say, really. I mean, it's like anything else. If you do that and then you try and feather the price up and the ad spend down and your ranking falls off a cliff, you're probably just in an over-competitive market and you shouldn't be there in the first place. C point 1, right, the one that I said at the beginning. So that's pretty much it, really, except the economics, which we need to touch on as well. If you're trying to sell a product for £12 in a place where the average is 10 and you have no reviews, you're onto a loser straight away in terms of sales, right? So you're going to have to drop the price. But of course, if you want to make profit once you get out of the launch period, then you need to think very carefully about your break even. I've seen people with a product where the break even point's about £12, and that's the maximum you could even ever sell it for. Break even being all of their costs added up, so the total landed cost plus Amazon. Just bear in mind always, it's fine to have a loss-making test, but when you're at scale, when you've done your launch and you've done your test and you're trying to make profit, you really are going to struggle to do that if your landed cost, in other words, all of the cost of manufacture plus shipping it over, import, whatever it is, getting it to Amazon, basically. Because really, if your buy price is too high, you're absolutely screwed. They do say that your profit is made when you buy, not when you sell, in general in life. And I think that is true. You've got to see what the market will bear in terms of your pricing for your product. But over-optimistic sales price projections are very dangerous because that's speculative. You don't know until you try and sell whether or not that will occur. But what you do know that is concrete and that you paid for in advance when you're an Amazon seller mostly, at least when you start off, if you haven't got great credit terms, what you do know is your cost price. So that is the only definite part of that equation between your selling price, uncertain, cost price to you, certain. Therefore, you have to really work on negotiating a low cost price at scale. I don't mean for your first sort of test order, but your second order, third order of private label product or custom product indeed needs to be such that within realistic prices, it's going to make profit. That's one of the hardest things to get right, and that's not an easy solution, but that truth is still clear. So I want to put that across loud and clear. You cannot get away with ridiculous cost pricing in the hope that you're going to achieve very high pricing. Just bear in mind the drivers behind Amazon. First of all, visually, everything is like a price comparison site par excellence, right? There is nothing that is quite as price comparison sitey as an Amazon search results page. And that's by design. Amazon have consistently, Jeff Bezos has consistently articulated the three things that customers want, and he's been going on about them for years and working to deliver it. Number one, greater selection. Number two, lower prices. Number three, quicker delivery. Quicker delivery is great for everyone, including us, because customers love it. But guess what? Lower prices and greater selection work against us. So there is always a downward pressure on price on Amazon. That's a given. So never, ever do your cost pricing side of things, what you spend money on, with an over-optimistic sales price. This is another thing that I see a hell of a lot. Be realistic. Make things work at that level. And guess what? If the economics don't work or the market is too competitive, just get out. If you've made a mistake, that's okay. Learn from it, sell through your inventory, move on to a new product. You don't have to give up on Amazon. Does that mean Amazon doesn't work? Whatever that means, no, that's just complete nonsense. I know people are making millions. I know people who've got to the point of doing $1 million or so in turnover within 2 years. It's perfectly possible with pretty modest investment. But that said, not every product's a winner. So if it isn't a winner, be honest about it. Sell through, learn the mistakes, and then go and get your next product. Thanks for listening. Hope that was a bit of helpful insider detailed input into the launch side of things on Amazon. If you wanted to work with me on your launch, just go to amazingfba.com/rare, R-A-R-E. That is a paid service. Currently costs, I think, £147, sort of towards the $200 mark. So, that's payable at the time of booking. So it's not going to be for everyone. But if you're serious about launching and you've spent thousands on a product already, I think that's a very good investment of your money and time. Thanks for listening.